Psychodynamic counseling is. In today's episode, we'll explore psychodynamic counseling and how this approach understands human experience and change. Psychodynamic counseling has its roots in some of the earliest developments in psychotherapy, particularly the work of Sigmund Freud and those who came after him. Over time, the approach has evolved considerably, but it has retained a central interest in how past experiences shape present patterns. At its core, psychodynamic counseling is concerned with meaning. It focuses on how experiences are understood, stored, and repeated, often outside of conscious awareness. Rather than concentrating only on what is happening now, psychodynamic work pays close attention to where patterns come from and why they persist. A useful way to think about psychodynamic counseling is to imagine it as a documentary rather than an exam. If CBT can feel like a maths exam where clear methods are applied to specific problems, and person-centered counseling is more like an English lesson that values expression and interpretation, psychodynamic counseling is closer to a long-form documentary. It is interested in the background story, the context, and the layers beneath what is immediately visible. In psychodynamic counseling, attention is often given to recurring themes. These might include familiar relationship dynamics, emotional responses that appear across different situations, or ways of seeing oneself that seem deeply ingrained. The assumption is that these patterns did not appear randomly, they developed in response to earlier experiences and continue because they once served a purpose. Another helpful metaphor is to think of psychodynamic counseling as archaeology. Rather than rearranging what is already on the surface, the work involves careful excavation. Nothing is rushed. What emerges is examined gently, with attention to how different layers connect. The aim is not to relive the past, but to understand how it continues to influence the present. Psychodynamic counseling places particular importance on relationships. This includes relationships outside of the therapy room, but also the relationship between client and therapist. Patterns that show up in everyday life may also appear in the therapeutic relationship itself. When this happens, it provides a live example of how certain ways of relating operate. This does not mean the therapist analyzes the client or makes authoritative interpretations. Modern psychodynamic counseling tends to be collaborative. Understanding this is developed together, often through reflection and discussion rather than explanation from the therapist. Compared with CBT, which often focuses on changing specific thoughts or behaviors, psychodynamic counseling is less concerned with immediate change and more concerned with insight and integration. It assumes that when people understand the origins and meanings of their patterns, change follows more naturally over time. Compared with person-centered counseling, psychodynamic work is usually more exploratory of the past, while person-centered emphasizes the conditions of the relationship as the main agent of change. Psychodynamic counseling places more emphasis on how earlier relationships continue to shape expectations and responses. Another everyday analogy is to think about learning a language. CBT might focus on improving grammar or sentence structure so communication becomes clearer. Person-centered counseling might focus on helping someone find their own voice and confidence in speaking, whereas psychodynamic counseling is more interested in where the language came from in the first place and how certain expressions became habitual. Psychodynamic counseling is often longer term. Although it does not have to be, its pace reflects its own focus on depth and understanding rather than efficiency. For some people, this depth feels valuable and grounding. For others, a more structured or present focused approach may feel more suitable. Understanding psychodynamic counseling helps complete the picture of how different approaches think about change. Each approach highlights a different aspect of human experience. Psychodynamic counseling brings attention to history and meaning and the ongoing influence of early relationships. In the next episode, we'll explore what integrative counseling means and how therapists combine ideas from different approaches in a coherent way. That's the scope of this episode. Each episode focuses on one specific element And this was it. We'll leave it here for now and move on in the next episode.